Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to this month's installation of the Adobe XD tips and tricks. My name is Dani Beaumont and I will be your host today. Just going to wait a few seconds to make sure that we are live with sound. We are live with sound. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to talk about collaboration workflows. I don't know how many of you caught Howard Pinsky's session, which I think was just yesterday, where he talked about the new document cloud feature. I'm going to touch on that a little bit, but I'm mostly going to just talk about how we work with others, be it other designers or your clients that are looking at prototypes and design specs, or how you can easily just view the content that you're creating in XD. So as usual, I'm a big fan of feedback. So I would love if, as we go along, you can throw any questions that you have into the comments area here on Facebook Live. I will stop from time to time and take a look at those, and I have some help keeping an eye on that chat for me. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to switch over into Adobe XD. How is everybody's new year going? I got sick last week when I was scheduled to do this session. I had bad food poisoning and I felt terrible for about a week. So I'm very happy to almost have my body back the way it should be. Okay, let's see. I'm just going to bring up a few notes here. All right, great. So as a designer, the idea with Adobe XD is that at the speed of thought, you have the ability to communicate your concepts, your ideas. Sorry, I still have way too many windows open here. Let me just get this set a bit more. Okay. To be able to communicate your ideas very, very quickly. XD is designed on purpose to be very low friction, to allow you, at the speed of thought, to be able to communicate your concepts. And as you're working, there are times that you're going to want to check in on the work that you're doing in different ways. And I just want to step through those methods to make sure it's something that you're familiar with. So I'm here in XD. I have the good old real asset that we tend to use on the team. And let's assume for a moment it's a design that I've been working on. As I work, there are obviously different levels of fidelity in my design work. So if I step back on this example, I can see that I've got some wireframes that are here. And depending on where you are in your process, if you as a designer want to understand where everything goes in an application or in a website, you can easily use wireframing to quickly go in and make that happen. And one of the best ways to get started with wireframing, if you've not done it before, is in the UI kits. There are wireframes that you can pull from that allow you to bring over content and work with it really quickly. So assuming for a moment you've gotten past that wireframe phase and you're in your ideation phase, you're working on your designs, I've got a set of mobile high fidelity screens that are here. And I'm able to start to understand how interaction with those different artboards, those different screens will start to happen. So one nice example here, if you look at this design, is being able to test this idea of an onboarding tour. So as a designer, if you are designing an application, one of your obligations, your responsibilities, is to make sure that you have the best usability possible. And in testing that usability, it's nice to build out a mock-up that you can sit down with a client to determine if they can understand what it is that's going on in your application. And an onboarding tour is a very common way, sort of a first use example of being able to see exactly all of the elements of your interface. So let's say I'm working on an onboarding tour here. I'm going to switch into prototype mode and go ahead. You'll notice I have some wires that are dragged amongst these elements here. If I want to take a quick look at a flow that I've got going on, what I can do is click on that first artboard in the flow. And if I select all here, you can see I have wires that connect these steps together. And I have the ability to kind of depart from that or jump out of this flow to go to the main application. That's kind of a quick quick key to how this design is set up. So there's a tour that's here, and at any time I can jump out or skip the tour and go to the live or the real prototype design pages. If I'm ready to take a look at that, so from an artboard standpoint, you can see how it can become confusing about how this interaction might happen if I have to imagine it. Being able to mock that up quickly and take a look at it is terrific. So the first thing I can do is come in and use the desktop player, just coming up on a different screen here real quick. Let me bring this over. And this desktop player allows me to interact with my work. So if I come in and say, sure, I'm ready to explore films, notice that it allows me to come and start to experience it. Now you can't tell, but my hands are not on the keyboard at this point. This is using time transitions to automatically transition from one screen to another, and some auto animation to give that nice transition between the screens as it steps the viewer through this onboarding experience of the design. Now, as I mentioned, that viewer can skip the tour at any time they want by clicking on the Skip Tour button, which takes them back out to that main screen. Looks like I've got a little bit of silly text right here, but we'll ignore that for a moment. So as a designer, I can come on in and interact with my work and get a sense of whether or not I like what I'm seeing. Another way that I can start to share this design would be to record this actual experience as basically an MP4, so a video. And to do that, I can come up here in the upper right-hand corner and click this record button. Now, at the moment when I record this video, it's just recording the screen. What it doesn't allow you to do, that we're actually exploring ourselves right now, is add audio to it. I think that would really take it one step further, in the same way I'm communicating to you about how XD works, to be able to record not only interacting with the screen, but your voice as you talk your client or talk your colleague through the design could be pretty terrific. For now, this record feature just records the screen and its interaction, and it actually shows you kind of where the cursor is as you're interacting in that recording, which makes it that much easier to follow along with navigating that application. So that ability to record is there. The next thing that I could do is actually build out a web prototype. And if you have been hanging out with XD for the last months, one thing you'll notice is that the team works pretty fast. I know that there's a mountain of features that are requested in user voice, which if you haven't been there, if you go to Adobe XD and user voice, it's a great place to see what's being voted on or requested and put your own votes there to prioritize the work that the team's doing. But the team is actually moving very quickly with a lot of functionality. And some of what we've delivered really just in the last 6 months is pretty phenomenal around sharing content with colleagues and clients. So when I'm ready to share, I'm going to come and click the share button on the upper right-hand corner. You may notice that this looks a little different. In the last few versions, we've been refining the discoverability of this whole flow. In that dropdown, I can share my actual document, and Howard touched on this yesterday. This allows me to actually give my source document to another designer. Let's say my colleague Ike. If he and I were working on the design together, perhaps he's refining some usability studies in the document, and I'm working on the high fidelity finished designs. We can work on that same file. If I share it with my colleague and he opens it up, basically, when he saves that out, it will save the changes to the shared version. If I were to open it at the same time that he's working, whoever it is that saves the first time will overwrite that cloud version. The person who saves the second time would be offered a save as, or to create a copy, so as to not overwrite changes that might have just happened from that first designer. So collaboration is definitely evolving for us, and we add more functionality there. I'm going to come in and share for review at this point, because what I'd like to do is show this onboarding flow to my colleague Ike. So to do that, I can come in and assign a title. I really encourage you, if at all possible, to work with what's known as private links or private sharing. There's a lot of advantages here around the collaboration workflow. So if I switch over to a private link, and let's say I want to come on in and invite my colleague Ike, I guess I should come in and create my private link first, which makes sense. So we'll call this Real Onboarding Tour. And I'm going to create that private link. So this is a very nicely secure situation. If you were to get this link, if you got your hands on the URL for this prototype, you would not be able to log into the prototype without using your Adobe ID, and you would have to be associated with the project. So if I come in and invite my buddy Ike to share and this prototype, by inviting him here, I can give him a message and send him that invitation. He could forward the email to someone else, but unless that person logs into the prototype using Ike's Creative Cloud username and password, they won't be able to access it. So it's a very secure way to share your designs and not worry that it's going to get out of your hands without meaning to. I've gone in and actually shared up a prototype, and my buddy Ike and I have played a little bit with it. I'm going to jump over to that just to show you what that experience is like once you have the chance to come in and add some comments in your work. So let's see. So this is a prototype that I shared up earlier, and as I mentioned, my buddy Ike is able to come in and communicate with me. If you look here on the side, we've added this kind of commenting field that you can get out of the way if you'd like as you're working. And this is true for prototypes and design specs, something you would share with a developer. If I expand that, I can see any comments that Ike might have made. Now, one thing that's worth pointing out is when you share your prototype or design spec as a named invitation with a known person, you have this nice level of communication, and that's by way of email or the Creative Cloud application. So if I go to my Creative Cloud app here, let's try that again. If I go to my Creative Cloud app in this area, let me just make sure I didn't do something really bad there. No, we're good. Lazy clicking there. If I come to the Creative Cloud application, I can see whenever Ike has commented on the design that I've sent to him. If I want to, I have what's known as a deep link here. So if I send it out and I'm waiting for comments, Ike and others that I might have invited can all submit their comments to me. I get a notification by way of my email client letting me know that Ike has commented on a particular artboard. I also get that notification right here in the Creative Cloud interface. The nice part about that is this supports what we call deep linking. So if I click on a particular comment, this is actually a different prototype, I think. Let's just see. So if I click in here from the Creative Cloud app, it's going to go on in and open up a prototype, open up the specific artboard in question, and bring up that comment that Ike made. So it's a really nice way to easily just communicate back and forth. If, as I'm working, I don't agree with what Ike has said or I have a question back for him, I can come in and @mention. So if I hit @ on the keyboard and type the words Ike, I can @mention Ike and say, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Can you tell me more? And then just by hitting return there, I submit that comment back to Ike. So really a nice way to track conversations back and forth. This can be multi-threaded, so to speak. So if Ike and I go back and forth 3 or 4 times, if our manager comes in, if our client comes in, I can easily track all of that commenting as I go forward. I can save new versions of my design and make sure that the old prototypes are available just to show a round of changes and what the client wanted, what the other designers meant, let's say for internal work, so that I have a good tracking mechanism for that communication with earlier versions. Notice that I have the ability to view resolve comments. So if I feel like something's finished, I can come in and resolve it. I can delete it if it's not relevant. And anything that I resolve, I can always go back to. So it's a way of just casually archiving earlier conversations as you go along. I'm going to pause for a second and see if there's any questions that are coming up in the very quiet crowd. I'm happy to see some applause, which is great, which comes probably from our side. So you are officially a very quiet crowd. Martin from Buenos Aires, good to have you. I look forward to any questions that you have as we go along here. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. So, as I mentioned, Ike and I can continue to communicate with one another, and I have that nice tracking mechanism as I work. If I want to take this further, let's say I'm done with my design process and I want to, as I mentioned, do a new round of changes that I then submit once again. So let's say this was the onboarding version 1. And for archiving purposes, I want to keep that prototype around, but I'd like to go in and start a whole new round of reviews with the next version of the document. I have a pretty easy way that I can do that. I'll come into that same flow. So I'll make sure that I select that first starting artboard once again. And in the share dropdown, I'll come on in and share for another round of reviews. I have this secure prototype that's out there. What I want to do is go back to settings, and I might go ahead and give this a version numbers here. So I'll call it version 2. And rather than updating the existing design, I can go in and generate a brand new link. And the brand new link will give me a fresh opportunity for a fresh set of comments and allow me to archive that first version. Okay? So that's all about prototyping and looking at click-through designs. Now, other ways that you can work, we recently, actually late December, delivered the Cloud Documents feature for XD, and it was kind of surprising to me, actually, how robust the XD app is for mobile. So you do have the ability to share your designs in the mobile world, probably in one of two ways, I would suggest. One is if you're working with someone, whether it's yourself or a client or a colleague, and you want to see your prototype in action on a device. What you can do is, instead of viewing that design, that desktop preview, click on the device preview. What this requires is that you have a USB cable connected to your mobile device. When it is connected, it will load up your prototype and allow you to interact with it. If you make changes as you're working, so for example, if I'm here in my design, notice how I've got the desktop version here. If I come on in and actually make live changes in my design, notice that I can see those changes live. That's true as well if I'm using USB to connect to my phone. Anything that I change in the desktop design will change in that live version. Now, if I want to hand the design to someone and let them interact with it, I can unplug the device and hand it to them. It's not going to give me that live refresh, but it will allow me to just let them interact with the design and note how they're interacting, keep an eye on the work that they're doing, and capture their feedback. So it's not required that that connection be there if you've loaded the prototype in that device, but if you want the live preview, being connected does help. So with that all set, let's say that the design is pretty well done and I'm ready to send it off to a developer to actually produce the finished design. For that, I'm going to come on into the share menu, and instead of sharing for design, for prototyping, I can share for development. And as I do this, there's some nice nuances here as well. So when I'm working, I have the ability to decide as a designer which of my source assets I want to go to the developer for production. So if I jump out here for a moment and click on an artboard, let's go back into design mode. I can click on in there and grab an element. I can come in and manually flag which of these elements I want to export as part of my publishing to design specs to a developer. So I can do that on a per artboard basis. I can come in and select an entire artboard and export all of the artboard elements. But I do have that ability to come in and just flag for export which elements I want to be included. So I'm obviously randomly flagging a few bits here. Let's make sure I get this onboarding tour now that I've done that. So I'm going to come in and set that home screen there and pull down on share to share for development. Notice that this number now says 8 assets and they're included. So as the designer, I can say, yes, I do want those assets to be included. And I have flagged those in the application. If I come on in here now, and let's just go with a public link for the moment, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and generate that design spec. Give that just a couple seconds more. just about. And then if I want to take a look at that in the browser, what you'll notice is I have all access to all of those artboards. If I click on any one of them, that same commenting workflow that we looked at a little earlier is available to me here. So although I did this as a public prototype, pretty much the @mention is going to rely on anybody that's already logged in and commented on some of my designs. I would be able to see them here. In the instance of a public prototype, you could see why it's not as secure. I can't control who gets to see it, and I also can't @mention them directly in that prototype until they make that first comment. But I can come in and take a look at any individual artboard, all of the elements that are here, and then come and, let's see if I go back here. I have the ability to then choose which of the assets associated with an artboard I'd like to export. So if I jump to another one where we added some of those assets, remember I came to this artboard and flagged some of the bits that I wanted to export. I can come here and shift or control select individual artboards, and from there determine what output format I'd like. So in this scenario, the idea is that I'm the developer now and I'm in the web browser interface. Rather than have to muck around with XD, I have this nice developer spec here in the browser. I can get all of the details that I need around typefaces. If there's any auto animations that are happening between artboards, I get information about that. And I have the ability to now extract the elements that I need to use as a developer, both vector or bitmap elements, and I can control the formatting and the resolution of that export work. Okay, we are going to keep going a little bit more. And let's just see, we talked about sharing with other people. We talked about private and public URLs. Let's talk a little bit more about a cloud file versus a local file. So if I come back into XD and I'm working, the files that I work with now are available in the cloud depending on how I work on my layout. So this is a feature that we just, as I mentioned, delivered at the end of last year. When I come to XD now and I pull down on File to a new document, right? I have the ability to come in and select which document I'd like to work with. Let's say I go with a web layout here. By default, if I don't go out of my way to change it, that document is a cloud document. I can tell that because of the cloud icon here on the left, and then the fact that that is automatically saving to the cloud. As I work, I can come in and add, obviously, very beautiful design elements here. But as I'm working, nothing's going to get in my way as I add these elements out. If I stop for a moment, when I'm idle for just a little bit, XD is going to automatically save the cloud version of that document up to the Creative Cloud. Now, as I work, I can continue to iterate on that. If I've gone in and saved something, or if I've made changes that I don't want, I have multiple levels of undo, even though that was automatically saved in the background. So I can hit Command or Control Z and back out of those changes, or repeat the changes as I work. I can also come in and assign a more proper name here. So notice the drop down here, I can come in and call this something real. Excuse me. And I can save that now to the cloud by default or back to my local computer. If I come and save it for myself in the cloud, I then have the advantage of being able to share that easily as a source document with others. So with this something real now up in the cloud, when I pull down under share, I can share the actual XD document with my colleague Ike. So I'll go on here and I'm going to grab Ike and I'm going to invite him to have access to that shared document. Once I've done it, if I come back into the interface, if I want to just show you what Ike's experience would be like, Ike can come in and select here on the left-hand side anything that's been shared with him. When he clicks on that, these are source XD files that both Ike and I have shared with one another and have access to. So I can easily work in that way. Another thing I do want to mention is that there is an application for mobile. It's for Android and iOS, and it's called Adobe XD app. If you are used to using XD, the mobile app, to access your designs, one thing you do want to do is go ahead and grab any of your local files and save them out as cloud documents. That will allow you to continue to be able to see those source files from your mobile application there on your mobile device. All right, you are still a rather quiet crowd. I see one question, so kudos to Lou. So if I make a new link to get new reviews, then how can I see older comments from previous links? That's exactly a perfect question for where we are right now. Because what you'll notice, Lou, is here I am in XD, and here in this left bar, I can manage links. If I click on Manage Links, I'm going to bring this browser window onto this screen. I got a couple screens going on here today. So let me move this here. So when I clicked on that Manage Links, it brings me to the cloud, the Creative Cloud version of my existence. Now remember what we did together? I went in and I published out the real onboarding tour, and I shared that with Ike, and Ike and I talked to each other. I clicked on that accidentally. Let's close that back out. So Ike and I commented back and forth on that onboarding tour, and I decided I wanted to create a second version of that design. I can come in and view the multiple versions here. So I might have real version 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. Every time I save out a new link, it's going to appear as a new published prototype here or a new design spec, depending on which it is that I saved out. So that's how that is handled. Adam's got a question. So Adam wants to know, are there plans to be able to share to an entire team without typing in a bunch of emails every time? Yes. Is it tangible, like something that I could point to really, really soon? Not immediately, so not within a month or so, but it is definitely the intention of the team. There's definitely an emphasis in 2019 to look at collaboration workflows, and specifically that, having teams that work together, teams that are part of a group in essence. Also having things like brand kits or symbol libraries that teams can easily reference, have the ability to edit or just consume depending on the rights that you define for that team. So yes, these are definitely things that are on the roadmap and tangible, I would say, before the end of this year for sure. Since it's January, I'm going to be vague, but the answer would be yes. All right, Adam has a second question. Okay, how to manage the transition to cloud documents when you're used to everything being available for everybody on Dropbox, Drive, etc. Yes, I have to be honest. I'm with you. It's taking me a while to get used to the cloud features. Depending on how you're working, you may find yourself in a hybrid scenario. There may be times that using cloud documents makes a lot of sense for you as a team as you share it. There may be times that using other sharing services still offers more value. What I would ask is that as a team, we're delivering cloud services and collaboration tools. We recognize that products like Dropbox have been around for, by my count, probably 10 or 15 years at this point, and they've had an opportunity to become a standard and have lots of features. We are just getting started in cloud documents, and you are probably going to be in a hybrid environment for now as you give us time to evolve that critical feature set that really leverages the Creative Cloud applications, and the community of designers that you work with. I think there's some really exciting stuff that's coming from the team, and you'll see why dedicating yourself to that format will make a lot of sense. But for now, I agree with you. You'll probably be in somewhat of a hybrid environment as those features evolve. All right, I have used a whole solid half hour, which is when the hook pretty much comes to pull me off stage. I'm going to swing back over for a second to the deck that we started with. Let's see, perhaps. There you go. So this is January 9th, and we've focused on collaboration workflows. About once a month, I'm doing a session. And the next one I'd love to focus on is early February with power user tips and tricks. I think I've got about 50 in my to-do box, but I know we won't get to all 50 in a half hour next month. If you would like to, you are welcome to send me questions that you'd like to see covered in that power user tips and tricks. My name is Dani. I am just Dani at Adobe, D-A-N-I. Don't spam me, please. If you'd like to watch this or other tips and tricks sessions or any of the Getting Started series that we've developed, we've got a 10-part Getting Started video set that we just delivered up on YouTube that take you through your very first experience with XD. In addition to that, I'm the person on the team that does the launch videos for new features. So you can find all of that on YouTube under Ping Dani or Danielle Beaumont. So thank you everyone for your time. I hope to see you here next month, and Happy New Year.